Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I'm talking about watches. Today I'm going to be doing a full review of this no-date Submariner Homage by Pagani Design. It is the PD-1694. Now I bought this off AliExpress from the Pagani Design's official store for 180 Australian dollars. If you are interested in this watch after the review, I will leave one of those affiliate links down below. Does mean if you click on it and you use it, I'll earn a tiny little bit of commission, but it doesn't cost you any more money to use it. And thank you very much if you do choose to use that link. So if you do choose to buy this watch, there's a couple of options that you can have. You can either buy it with the Seiko NH35 or you can buy it with the Miyota 8000 series. Now I chose to go for the Seiko. I do prefer that over the 8000 series Miyotas. It can also cost you a little bit more if you choose to buy it with the bigger packaging, the more substantial box from Pagani Designs. I chose to spend a little bit less money and just get the basic box. I don't really think I need a bigger box from Pagani Designs for that extra money. Let's flip the camera around, but before I do so, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I'd really appreciate it if you just click on that subscribe button. Alright, let's check out this watch. So here we have a standard Pagani Designs box. We kind of all know what to expect now, and inside we get all the same usual bits and pieces. We get a nice polishing cloth, we get this sort of Bond style NATO strap, we get our unsigned warranty card, booklet, and of course our Submariner Homage no date version. And I have to say I'm actually quite impressed by it. I think it's probably one of the better Pagani Design watches that I've handled personally myself, especially with this particular bracelet. It's a little bit better than I expected. And if you want to buy one of these, well, it comes in a couple of different variations. What I got was the sort of the silver hands with the white lume and the white sort of lume on the outside of the bezel. But it also comes as a orange sort of style lume and more of a sort of a yellowy sort of vintage style lume. So I have to say I'm not quite sure whether they've completely homaged the Rolex dimensions with this particular watch. But this one here, it is 41 millimeters in case diameter. It is 14 millimeters thick. The lug to lug is 47.2. And we have those female end lugs, so it really helps drop away directly from those lug, which is really nice. We have a lug width of 20 millimeters and sized up on the supply bracelet onto my 6 3/4 inch wrist is 152.5 grams. So what have we got on the dial of this watch? We've got a nice matte black underneath, just presenting just a very clean, nice surface to then project the rest of the bits and pieces on this watch. The hands are a polished silver, including that second hand. They've got some lume in them. Everything else on the dial there is printed though. We've got sort of some indices printed on with then the lume applied on top of that. And then in white, we have a minute track around the outside. We have the Pagani Design logo, Pagani Design name, automatic, water resistant, 200 meters, 660 feet, and Japan movement down the bottom there, if you can see. Now that's covered by this boxed sapphire domed crystal, and you can see at those extreme angles you're getting that distortion, which is always very, very nice to see. I always do appreciate that on watches. And this particular style of homage for this particular Rolex, it's very nice to actually have that sort of domed. It just gives you that little bit more of a slight vintage feel to it. Surrounding that dial, we've got that nice jet black ceramic insert. You can see how it's actually got a bit of a 3D effect. They've cut away for those numbers and for those little slashes there for the minute indicators. Now they're all lume filmed as well. So I'm going to put a lume video in now, and I hope it shows you the inconsistencies in the lume. And I'm not talking about different colors. They're using the same color of lume throughout the watch. And I'm talking about the amount of lume applied, and the amount of lume applied specifically on the indices versus the rest of the watch. You'll see that the indices actually fade a lot quicker, and when you're looking at it in daylight, you'll actually see differences in the colors because of the amount of lume applied to the watch. However, that lume issue aside, I think the rest of the watch is actually pretty good and quite well presented, so it's worth keep going and keep looking at it. Don't discount it just for any lume issue. The bezel itself has that nice easy edge to grab. It's actually quite soft to grab. It's really nice and easy to grab as well, and it actually has one of the best actions of a Pagani Design watch that I've ever used. It has a nice gentle click. It has about a medium sort of resistance. I sort of can't really move it. Oh, I sort of can move it with one hand if I really try, but it's not that really light action that some of these sort of Chinese watches have. And there is a tiniest little bit of back play, and there's no other movement at all. So from a bezel action, it's probably the best that I've had from Pagani Design. Now, obviously this watch is all made of 316L stainless steel, both the bracelet and the case and all the other bits and pieces. We have a nice vertical brushing on top of the case. We have a high polish on the side, on both sides, and we have some circular polishing surrounding the back of that case back there. We have a semi-guarded crown. Crown is screw down and actually has a very nice screw down action as well. And when it gets to that point, it just pops out lovely, neat and tidy. You'll see there's a little O-ring inside there. So hopefully that water resistance is actually aided by that O-ring. This has a NH35 Seiko movement inside, very smooth to use. It does have a ghost position at where the date would have normally been, but it doesn't feel like there's anything moving inside the watch, so I think they may have removed that date wheel, which is a good thing to see. And obviously being a NH35, it has hacking as well. Moving around the hands is nice and easy, as what we expect from these Seiko movements. Now, we have all seen an NH35 on a time grapher before, but I still do find it interesting to see the deviations and the differences between them. So let's check this one out. So I have to say that these are not the best figures that I've ever seen out of an NH35, but as expected, it's 21,600 vibrations per hour. We have a reasonably high beat error. Well, it's not particularly high, it's just sort of higher in the range that I would like it. As long as it's under 1, it's okay, which it is, but it's still getting close to that 1, isn't it? Amplitude, okay, 245, that's not terrible, that's not perfect. Dropping down to 235 now. And rate +8 to +10 seconds a day. That's not terrible, but it's probably not the best that I've seen so far. And one of my favorite parts of this watch, surprisingly for a Pagani design, is actually the bracelet. Normally I don't mind the bracelets off the Pagani designs, but this one is actually a little bit better than what I expected. Has fantastic solid end links. They fit in with the case really well, not just from a brushing perspective, because they do fit well from that brushing, but if you have a look that way, look how well it actually integrates into that case there. Also fits very, very well. There's only the slightest amount of movement, or pretty much no movement whatsoever. Having female end links as well is also very nice because it then just drapes away on your wrist and fits really nicely. It does show that it looks like a sort of a 5-piece bracelet there. I wanted to show you this because normally you'd expect this all to be one solid link, and it sort of is. You'll see these 3 parts here. That's one solid link sort of looking to be divided up into 3. However, the end pieces are actually separate themselves, which is quite good. So effectively, it's actually a 3-piece link trying to look like a 5-piece link. They are, however, sort of fake rivets there. They're not real. You can't unscrew each one of them. And the screw links that are in there, as you can see, are just screws. So you're not sort of screwing on a rivet there. It does, however, have quite a nice 2-push milled clasp. And it does have a diver's extension in there. But it is fairly basic, that diver's extension. It has 3 levels of micro adjust. And looking just in here, you can see on the back now that I've got the watch open. We've got one of these new style of Pagani Designs case backs. This one's showing off a bit of a mountain, so it's like a mountaineering style case back. And I really do appreciate the case backs that they're doing now. I quite like them. They're a little bit different, a little bit more interesting. And here we have it on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. I think it fits really nice to my wrist. I think a big part of that is those female end links. But as you can see when you look down, even though they're quite a flat case shape, I still think it fits really quite nicely and very neat and tidy. Obviously being a 6 3/4 inch wrist, that's sort of like a medium sized wrist, but I think it would actually fit wrists smaller and certainly definitely would fit wrists bigger than mine as well. I'm quite impressed by it. It has that nice feel, has that nice look. It just sort of suits my wrist. I'm quite impressed by it. So what do I like, what don't I like, and what would I change? I have to say some of the best parts about this watch is just the general looks of it. I like this bracelet and I like how it fits and feels on my wrist. I think it's just a nice proportioned watch. I think it has a very good looking dial on it. I think it's great to have that proper water resistance, and I'm fairly confident with that water resistance. And I'm certainly really impressed by this bracelet. I know it's not the perfect bracelet. It does not comparable against probably the real watch by any means that it is homaging, but for a Pagani Designs, I think it's the best bracelet I've seen from them so far. Well, what do I dislike? Well, there's a fairly obvious one. I don't like that disparity between the lume color on those indices and what's on the hands and on the bezel insert. I think just from looking at it in daylight, you can see there's a slight difference in color, but certainly when you do the lume shot at night, you can see the differences and the concerns that one is much better than the other. However, lume is not a main factor for me when I'm buying watch. I don't really need that lume at night. However, having it look slightly different in daylight is a bit of a concern for me. So what would I change? Well, obviously I would change that loom. There's not really that much else about it that I would change. Obviously it would be nice if they were proper sort of rivets rather than just the screws, rather than just those faux rivets. But at this price point, I'm not really expecting that. I think they've actually done a very good job. But let's flip back to me now and I'll give you some of my final thoughts about this watch. Now, I have owned quite a few Pagani design watches now, and I do have my favorites. But I have to say that this is my favorite Pagani design that came on a bracelet. I think it's got one of the best bracelets with the best clasps, but I think it all works together as a whole. I think if you compare it against the others that I've owned that have been on bracelets, this is the one I'd choose to go for. And I think that's because it just works well on the wrist. I think it looks good, and I just like how the details of it have been put together and how well it's been produced. As always, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I hope to see you again in the next video.